I think that there's a probability, and a lot of science bases off of probability.
Right.
But so in the same way that my religious beliefs are, my kind of idea of what a ideal society would be is kind of based on probability.
Sure.
And it's unlikely, and I acknowledge that. But just because it's really difficult to do doesn't mean that we shouldn't try it.
Sure.
Because there's so much at stake.
Sure.
And so I think that it's unlikely, but probabilities change all the time. So
I mean, just look at Iceland wrecking in the Euro Cup.
I don't sports.
You don't sports like at all?
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, marching band's a sport, right?
Sure. Yes, it is.
That was all the sport that I did.
Okay.
But yeah, so whenever, let's say there's a probability for world peace, and maybe on the cusp of World War I, the probability of world peace was very low.
Sure.
Extremely low. Because all of these alliances
all these countries had all these guns that they were anxious to try out on each other. Like,
and so, and just there was this big idea of like nationalism, especially in Germany. So like,
yeah.
Like the probability for world peace was very low. So, yeah. But then other stuff happens to where it kind of goes up a little bit higher.
Sure. Right.
Maybe right after World War II, people were like, man, that really sucked.
Right, like the past 30 years were no bueno. Can we not do this again?
Yeah, and so right there, the probability was like, we've got these nukes, and everybody's kind of deterred from, going into anything.
Or
and
broke.
So, yeah, so like the Cold War was kind of like, it wasn't world peace or anything, but it was like,
decidedly not, but
it was like, guys, if we jump into this, it'll be really bad. So that's kind of where peace was a little bit higher.
Sure.
So there are different levels, and I think stuff can happen to where peace can get a little bit higher and more likely. So
what the ideal society for you is primarily a question about peace, then?
Both peace and technology.
How so?
Because I guess my philosophy on that is that a lot of it really depends on technology because it's kind of the only way forward. It gets even bigger than that, but like the way that humans were as, tribes and hunter-gatherers, there's no way to go back, but what we have now is based on technology. We can go beyond what we are as humans via technology.
Huh.
And so, yes, I'm kind of weird in this sense, but I would go even as far as like, yeah, I don't mind a robot arm.
Okay. So like a transhumanist, like almost transcendentalist view of technology as a perfecter of human beings.
And that's much less likely. But
okay. And then again, you started this by saying probabilistically, so this makes more sense now.
But whenever a technology comes across to say, I mean, because I mentioned this before, we have hydroponics.
Sure.
And then we can automate hydroponics.
Right.
We can build farms upwards. And so, for that to say, the likelihood of having a sustainable resource society is pretty likely with the technology that we have. We may not have, or we haven't implemented it entirely yet, but it's there. The possibility is there. And so we could actually make a sustainable society with the technology that we have now and the technology that we can implement.
Okay.
And so in that same regard, managing resources kind of goes hand in hand with peace.
Well, yeah.
Because once you don't have people fighting over stuff, or fighting over land and resources, then you can finally be like, all right, are we good?
Sure.
Okay. And so with more technology and more ways that we can improve the human experience via technology, the more that we can move towards peace. But at the same time, we also have technologies that improve to impede world peace.
Sure.
With much more technology improving in how to better kill one another. And I'm sure you know much more about that than I do.
Yeah, on some level, yeah.
And at the same time, no matter what people have, they'll kind of find a way to kill each other anyways.
Yeah, I think some of them will.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's theoretically possible to turn even the most rabid warmonger into a peaceful person.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we're talking probabilistically. I actually disagree with you that I don't think it's that the future or even the past was primarily technology driven, because technology flows from the values that humans put into it.
Mm-hmm.
There's not like a hidden resource of technology that you can go and mine.
Yeah.
And like you dig in the ground and you're like, oh, a photocopier. Like, I don't know why photocopy was my example just now, but it's not like it was just sitting there and then it was like, oh, you have technology. And so, when we were in tribes,
mm-hmm.
which we were in for the longest period of ever in human existence,
mm-hmm.
and that's probably going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
We were just tribal groups for so long. It'd be very difficult to do something for as long as that. The technology got fairly intricate. It wasn't complex because we didn't have the energy levels to make complex things. But it was not. These people weren't stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But the technology that they had was very much predicated on the societies that they were living in.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of the point of civilization to begin with. Civilization requires energy. Civilization is complexity. The more complex something is, the more civilized it is. And also, I think the more ephemeral something is, the more civilized something is. And so there is kind of this sense of impermanence to civilization. I think that's the reason we mow our lawns. There's this sense of manicure, this sense of artificial essence to that which is the most tamed, I suppose. That it is kind of impermanent. And technology can help that, but that means that on a really deep level, and I'm not talking about like the span of a human lifetime, that civilization itself is not sustainable. And that if you want to create something that's completely sustainable, you have to let a little bit of rewilding take place, because that means that the sustainability has to be outside of your control.
Yeah.
When you automate aquaponics, what you're actually doing is you're setting up your own ecosystem, and that ecosystem puts out benefits that you have designed, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like the fish aren't computer chips.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree with you in that I think that things can be made better and that peace is going to help an awful lot there. I just think that as goes perfect societies, I'm a big believer in perfect being the
goal,
perfect being the impediment of the good enough, and that good enough is frequently really good, but that there's always going to be a compromise, particularly if you're talking about multiple people. So I actually don't believe that a perfect society can exist, because when you talk about a perfect society, you're always making a value judgment. And whenever one person makes a value judgment, there's going to be a disagreement. And so the closest that I can get to perfection is kind of this, old school conservative style of we're going to compromise and no one's going to get everything that they want, but we're going to try and get as many people as much as they want. And technology can definitely help in that. I mean, the fact that everybody can talk to everybody now means that there's that ability. But the fact that, as you said, technology has profuted down to the lowest level means that at some point we're going to get basically the ability to create nukes in your garage at the rate we're going. And so we're going to have to deal with that somehow. I think that and my last point, and I think that just as goes technology, the biggest driver of of social change in the first decade of the 21st century has been technology, but it's been built on the back of these social and cultural forces that have created the technology in the first place. And so if you want to deal with the technology, you shift the culture to accommodate it. You don't simply pile more technology on top of it. Like, for instance, the world still hasn't caught up to everybody having a cell phone.
Yeah.
The bleeding edge of, like, commerce has. But, like, governments as a whole haven't. And I think culturally we're going to want to shift towards much more decentralized structures.
Yeah. Because
we're running up against, like, this don't work so good no more. When, like, there's one person that's supposed to tell everybody, but now everybody can tell everybody. Like, this podcast has the theoretical ability to reach damn near everyone on Earth with the technology that we have. And I think that the biggest driver of the 21st century, like all other centuries, is going to be cultural and people scale things, but the technology is going to have a really outsized role simply because you can transmit those base level things to such a wide audience.
Yeah. So first thing, I don't quite mean that technology is just like a thing in and of itself, sort of like a resource that you can mine, because technology is very much a reflection of human ideals, or human culture even, that similar with religion. A religion is sort of like this basis of ideas, and then how it's reflected in the society is just based on the values of the people within it.
But that can feed both ways, so can technology.
Yeah, and so, if a society's value is much more in guns and stuff like it is in America. Then you can have... So, a real quick tangent. There was... I was shopping with Sable, and there was, like, this shirt at this one place, and it said #America, and I was like, they misspelled Murica. But anyways... and there was this one, like, political comic, like very New Yorker, that was, like, French, and it's, you can really tell society's values by what it makes easy to reach. And it was a picture of a short guy reaching above his gun rack to reach a book. And so that's saying... It's much harder for us to become smarter, and it's much easier for us to reach for a gun. And so a society's values being in guns and stuff can be reflected in that. Look at how awesome we made these guns.
Yeah.
And then look at how terrible our education system is.
Can I real quick tangent on your tangent?
Yeah.
On some level... And I understand where they're coming from, and I really don't honestly disagree with them. I just find it ironic that it can kind of become Schrodinger's Republican, in that everyone knows that Republicans are, these poor, uneducated hicks that just love their guns and Jeebus and pass the mac and cheese and the fried chicken. And if we can just get these damn immigrants out the country, we'll just make America great again. And, like, I could, you know what I mean? Like, that's so firmly implanted, it's never going away. At the same time, everyone knows that Republicans are these rich white assholes that had all their money given to them as trust fund babies, and they just want to defund everything for everyone so that they can privatize and make even more money. And places like the New Yorker can switch between the two almost instantaneously and go the same direction. And so this goes back to what we talked about the first time. About the tribalization of politics, and about how... I think I plugged this blog last time too, Slate Star Codex, which you would love. About how when we talk about America, the popular opinion of an American is not an American with an A, it's American with an apostrophe. And how the Americans are the red team. They're the Republicans. They're the people who, marry early and get divorced early and have kids and get fat and own guns and hate brown people, and almost as much as they hate education. and want to defund everything for Jesus, and and that kind of becomes that tribe. And honestly, those trend lines they exist.
Yeah,
like they totally do. But it's not exactly so cut and dried. And so I'm like I agree with you, but at the same time, we have like the greatest college network in the world. And so what I think of when I hear hashtag America, I don't think America is a nation. Mm-hmm. I think America is an engine.
A little bit, yeah.
America takes what the rest of the world has and turns it up to 11 and makes it, and we make it into a polarity. We have the greatest number of top 100 colleges in the world. We also have the greatest number of people who think that we never walked on the moon. We have the greatest number. We have the greatest. Like in terms of sheer numbers, we have the greatest number of morbidly obese people in the world, and we have the greatest number of Olympic athletes that have won gold. We have the greatest space program and the greatest people, the greatest number of people who want to defund space program. We have the most cloyingly liberal of liberals, and we have the most registered gun owners. You take anything in the world, and America is probably going to go on both directions, and just take it up to 11. Yeah. And this turns America into an engine. It means that we don't reward the moderates here. Mm-hmm. And France, to a large degree, does. I mean, it's not because I think that was your example. I heard France from you.
I think I said France, yeah.
But it was just Europe as a whole tends to reward. Their moderates tend to be more liberal than our moderates. Yeah. And that's okay. Like, I'm not making a value judgment there, but I mean, like, they have parliamentary systems, the whole of them almost, that are set up to reward. Okay, you vote for your people, and I'll vote for mine, and we'll get in the middle, and we'll form a majority government, and we'll do it that way. And for us, we're just like those king Republicans. If they, we got to defeat the other team, guys, and that's the way American culture has been forever. And that goes for anything. And so if you really want to understand American culture, you have to understand it from the lens of we're an engine. Mm-hmm. And if it works for you, it works for you better than just about any other place in the world. But if it doesn't work for you, there's really nothing for you here. And that means that for the majority of Americans, they either find their one thing that they can become a radical about, and that becomes their identity, and that feeds the tribalization of American politics that we found specifically since the end of the Cold War, and we've kind of intentionally stripped the middle away from those things, which I don't like. And that, you either become, your identity becomes what you're radical about in America, or you don't really have a cultural voice. Yeah. And that can become extraordinarily annoying, almost maddening for me, because all I want to do is like understand things. Like I've never been the type of person who wants to go out and just be radical for the sake of it. Though I think that as I get further in my 20s, I think I'd want to do it just for the hell of it, just so I can see where this goes, see if I'm right, and just pick something and just run with it, just to kind of. That would be an interesting blog post. The intentional radical or something, just to see if you could. But I'll end the tangent there. But I think you're really onto something there. That for at least part of American society, their identity is not predicated on being educated at all. In fact, being educated is the sign of being the other team. Yeah. And that there are, especially in this part of the country, there are a lot of them. But if you're not in that group, you don't normally see them because we self-segregate so utterly in this country that it's actually very difficult to find organic ways to. Especially because if you want to, you can just gated community yourself up and get everything delivered, or just drive single occupant in your car to the high price shopping mall. Yeah, I'm sure some of your people in Sprouts are that exact same way. They don't know anybody on the red team. They're just not part of the life. They might as well live in a country that is populated purely by people that are just exactly like them. That is very easy to do in this country because we reward that engine-like churning. And that, honestly, if I could change one thing about America, it would be that. Yeah. When I talk about network tribes or building community, when I talk about the future and it being decentralized, that's a large part of what I actually talk about. This is what I mean by culture and what people do and what they think driving technology. Yeah. Because at the rate we're going, if we want technology to really drive culture, we're going to end up with multiple cultures because they don't communicate anyways, and they want different things, and so they're a priori going to have value differences that they don't know of because they don't talk to each other, and they're going to end up with two you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's and we're going to get some fantastic gun technologies, and we're going to get some fantastic health technologies, but we're not going to share them.
Yeah, but I was using guns.
I understand. Example, I mean, it's easy to do here because I can pass, I think, 2 gun stores on my way to work, and it's maybe a 5-minute drive. Like two places that sell firearms on my less than 5-minute commute. You know, and like you're completely right. It can get utterly ridiculous because the radicals are in charge of that conversation, and neither side is ever going to stop. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, but okay, so as technology becomes, more advanced, as the values sort of reflect that, it does require a shift in values.
Well, yeah.
And I mentioned this a lot with Caleb, that there does need to be a shift in values so that we don't value the things that will eventually destroy us. Because what a lot of our society has, sort of baked into it now, to where we just grow up just acknowledging these ideas, may also be very disastrous.
Sure.
In the future.
We're agreed there.
And so for me at least, and this is something I began to question a long time ago, even in like high school, I think, is that the idea that everyone just holds as acceptable and just commonplace of money, to me is, it's never really challenged in like a sane conversation, because anyone who goes like, well, what if we didn't have money? It's like, that dude's crazy.
Right.
And so that's a much harder conversation to have with people. But in that same regard, I think that what we have our values placed in as a society will also drive what we move towards with technology, and how that will lead us to being more sustainable, more peaceful.
Well, and also, I mean, there is that feedback loop. At this point, take Twitter, for instance. It's a technology, but it's driving conversations that wouldn't happen on otherwise. So at this point, can you really separate the technology from the conversation and it driving its own culture? Like if you took away the conversation, of course, Twitter doesn't exist without the people, but the people wouldn't congregate there without Twitter. So you have this interconnectivity that happens that has the possibility of creating these communities, basically, that wouldn't exist without technology. Yeah. But it's also driving its own culture. Like it becomes kind of a symbiotic loop. You're really good at this, by the way, because you've opened up like 3 different threads that I'm trying to juggle here while thinking about it. First, and I'm gonna drop like 2 of these. I know it.
It's fine.
Maybe 3. maybe I had them. Yeah.
Which one of the points that I made?
Like all of them, and I'm trying to figure. Like I had like conversation starters, and they just totally dropped them. I need to like bring a sheet of paper up here to be like, ooh, this is good. There was something about what you said that like things need to change, and like we have the possibility of like destroying ourselves. That's what I was saying, or thinking. I think that the biggest issue facing our generation is actually inbaked apathy. And I think also that there are very good reasons for that apathy to exist, and that's what worries me. It's like it's very easy, even for millennials, to go on anti-millennial screeds about like, we just don't care, we don't vote. And I don't actually do that, because I think there are very good reasons why there are, our generation, and of course, the older ones increasingly as well, just don't care for the systems that our grandparents and our great-grandparents cared for. Like there was a study done about who actually trusts the U.S. government, and millennials actually didn't score the lowest. They scored like the second lowest after Generation X. But what was alarming about it, if you believe that trust in government is important in the country, is that this was part of a study that was tracking over multiple decades, and this was like the third time they'd asked Generation X as a whole. This is the first time they'd asked millennials, and the first time millennials were asked, which was when people who were now in their mid to late 20s were asked in their early 20s, late teens, they were polling at rates that it took Generation Xers into their early to mid 30s to get, and that was where millennials started. Yeah. And so as you go on further, it's highly likely that our generation is going to end up like where the Gen X's are, which is in like low single digits, 15, maybe 20% of people trust the government. That's going to be where we are, like by our mid 20s, and then by the time we get in our 30s, it's going to be like fuck everything. And if it doesn't change, that's where we're headed. Like that's already baked in. And so I think it's imperative that things do change, because right now there's not really an easy alternative to the status quo. And I think it's going to need to be built. Yeah. Now, which is why I'm so interested in asking about the perfect society, because it is going to have so many implicit value judgments. Yeah. And then all the technology that already exists or that might future exist layered on top of that. And we need to figure out something that, solves the problems of now and solves the festering problems of the last 20, 50, whatever years. Or at least, deals with them well enough that we don't pass this whole thing on having metastasized to our kids if we ever get around to having any, because things can be so bad now that many of us aren't. And that's the biggest thing culturally for me, that there is just this. There are very good reasons just to be like screw it. I don't none of this matters. I don't care about this. I just want to avoid it as much as possible. It doesn't benefit me at all.
And you see that a lot in kind of internet, Reddit culture.
Yeah,
that it's just very.
It gets very escapist.
Yeah,
because
and that is where you get this big push towards I care about this one thing and this thing only, and then everything else doesn't matter.
Right. It almost because once you find these people who are self-radicalizing out of boredom or out of loss of everything else, that becomes your identity. We have, in this country at least, and I think increasingly throughout the world, stripped out much of the implicit sense of what it means to be someone someplace. And I mean, there are checks and balances to that as well. If I was, as a young white male, if I were born 50 years before I was born in the early 40s, growing up in the 50s and 60s, I would have known exactly what was expected of me, but I also would have known exactly what I was supposed to do at all times, and there wasn't really a whole lot of everything was on rails. And that, it's no surprise that, one, you have a youth bulge that comes of age in the late 50s and the 60s, and two, you have such a cloistered society, and you have everybody getting as wealthy as they were during the post-war boom, and you have, the 60s turned into capital D, capital S, the 60s, and it became this the complete and total value shift that this country experienced then that's still reverberating today. So, you can have an ordered society, or you can have one where everybody gets to try and do what they want, but you cannot have both. Yeah. And so, the only thing that I've come up with right now is, why try and have a society? Why try? Yeah. Why? I think that. I really do think that the '60s won.
Yeah. Real quick.
Oh, right. Yep. That's. I keep knocking the table just out of nervous energy. This is the second time I've done this now. So if you guys are hearing thump thump thump, sorry, that's me. The '60s won so hard that we're never going back. If Make America Great Again means bring the '50s back, you're an idiot. That's never going to happen, and I don't think we should try. I'm a big believer that you can't repeat the past. And I don't intend to try to. There are good ideas that are timeless, that have happened beforehand, and that's why I enjoy history so much. But when I talk about a perfect society, if anybody, cocks their head back and starts remembering the past, I'm done with the conversation, because you're not going to tell me anything. You're just, emotion vomiting back when, you were a kid and everything was great. And so, I think that we're getting to the point that so many of the systems that we rely on are from different eras that their problems are now irrelevant or have been solved or haven't, and they've just gone away, that we just need to come up with something different.
Yeah.
And that's, and I think that the process of creating that will lead to these organic communities that especially this generation is so yearning for and isn't getting, and it'll solve the apathy problem because it's like, all right, here's your job, like fix everything, go.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a process of simplification. Actually, I don't think we're going to be able to complexify our way out of the problems we're facing globally because they are already so complex. There's going to be decreasing returns on investment. For things to become ever more complex. And that actually doesn't mean being anti-technology. Because technology is just using, intelligence to create something to fix a problem. Like, I'm reminded, because my dad's a physician, of, like, pills to treat high blood pressure. Like, we've got that down to a science. The treatment of blood pressure is basically just dealing with the second order effects of them pumping them full of pills in the first place. So you give them this, and then you give them this to thin their blood so they don't their blood pressure is too high, and then you give them this so they don't get anemic, and then you just on and on. You can end up with some pretty ridiculously long cocktails of drugs to fix the issue. Whereas if everybody just wasn't obese, then we'd have such less of a need for that. And so at some point, things are getting so complex, and the complexity is going to take, just keeping up with the complexity we have is going to take up so many of our resources that there's going to be, there's going to be a point that says, all right, this needs to change. I mean, the fact that we're talking about this in a suburb is a good point of that. I don't think that you and I are ever going to live in suburbs. Just because it costs so much money to have your own little house that you drive to for every place, and that is so far away from all of the rest of the stuff that you do. I mean, like, not even talking about the sociological ramifications of growing up in such an artificial environment. I'm not a fan of suburbs, by the way. If the first two sentences weren't enough of a hint, that my good enough would be someone else's perfect, I think. But when I say perfect, I just mean like the best that can be optimally done when you balance the society and the technology we have and the energy we have and the people that we have. And that means that it's a constant balancing act. That perfect 20 years ago looks very different from perfect now. And then it varies from person to person. And so, really, it's just, it's rehumanizing a conversation that frequently can be too technocratic for me.
I find that the younger generation, like us, is we are looking at the system and just going like, oh, gosh, I don't even... Because what happened is that the prior generations grew up with it, and so they kind of got like... They got to learn the ropes as they grew up with it, and so now that they're, finally adults, whatever the hell that means, that... They get to just run the system and just understand all the rules that are implicit in it. Whereas now, we sort of grew up once the system was much more complex, and so the barrier to entry is huge. And so now for us to understand what the hell government means or what the hell economics means, we have to like fall into this rabbit hole of just like, well, here's what, supply and demand, but then that also means this thing, and then here's just the entire stock exchange, which is a shitstorm of its own.
Here's your tax bracket, and here's financialization, and here's the currency derivatives, and it's just.
And anyone reaching adulthood nowadays just goes, I have no idea what this means, whereas anyone that's in their 40s and 50s now and just like, ooh, yeah, I'll play the stock exchange, but like... and I am speaking from like a very closed off point of view, but there is a push towards wanting to rebuild, not even rebuild, but destroy and just create a new one.
It would be re-simplification.
Yeah, and that is something that is kind of indicative from Bernie Sanders and how many supporters that he has, and that he literally says political revolution. And while his intent may not be a literal revolution, the people that support him might actually mean a literal revolution.
Sanders has three camps of supporters. From my opinion. The largest is basically the majority I was referencing earlier that just gets tired of being hammered from all sides by, one, economics and demographics that are not going their way, and two, a political system that, if you're not a radical, does not work for you. So they're basically throwing their support behind a guy who has been so almost boringly consistent his entire life that in and of itself becomes a radical thing.
Yeah.
You're seeing the radicalization of the majority because the status quo has now been so conclusively proven to not work for them.
Yeah.
The second camp is like out and out collectivist / socialist / like we need to tear down America wholesale and rebuild something good for the first time. If you're really hardcore on that bandwagon, or just make it better. These are your hardcore progressives. This is not the majority of America. The majority of America is just fed up, and I think rightfully so. But it's these radicals that are going to be the ones that are going to carry his campaign forward when I think he gets shut out at the convention. And the third are the social justice types.
Oh, yeah.
These are your Black Lives Matter. These are your people that are waving Mexican flags at Donald Trump. And these guys have always existed somewhat uncomfortably, like behind the populist facade of Sanders. And Sanders does not actually do a lot to engender this. But he also hasn't done anything to quash it either. Like him, that I think, honestly, too famous photo of him, with his hands clasped, head bowed, as the Black Lives Matter ladies physically take over the podium. I don't think that encapsulates Sanders' run, his platform, by any means, because he said too much stuff that makes too much sense. You'd have to be against him politically to look at the picture and go, well, that's Sanders there, just getting that's asinine. But I'm worried that I think at this point, when Sanders loses, his party that he's tried to build around himself is going to consist of only the radicals. Yeah. And you're going to get only the hardcore socialists. Actually, not even socialists, because I don't think, for me, that socialist is all that bad of a word.
You're talking to me of all people.
Well, and I think this is a very millennial thing. Like, I don't even think Gen Xers, especially Gen Y, or the baby boomers, like that was. And I think, we both are post Cold War kids. Like, at no point was the Soviet Union like, well, socialism means that you're going to have to starve so that for the good of all means that like we just spread the misery around. I'm all for socialized cost on things that everybody gets to use. That just seems like common sense to me. The issue with that is that I am not a collectivist, and that I think socialized costs doesn't mean that like markets can't run. Collectivists would disagree with that. They are for absolute equality of outcome regardless. Those are the type of people that are going to take Sanders' revolution. Those are the people that people call the Sandernistas for a reason. And what worries me specifically about the Sanders campaign is that the two leftover groups to carry Sanders' revolution, quote-unquote, forward are the collectivists and Black Lives Matter and people like that. And that worries me because Sanders has so much to actually say that's prescient. Yeah. And that the majority are going to basically, in their blind fury at a system that does not support them, are going to throw themselves behind any populist person who is not the establishment. Yeah. This is how Trump is going to win. Like, this is how Trump wins. Is basically, he has self-radicalized along literally just two things. And it's one, fuck the establishment, and two, immigration. Literally the only two things that he's actually taken a hard stand on. Everything else he gets slippery on. You could even argue that on immigration he gets real slippy. Yeah. But
I would say that Trump, first and foremost, is just a avatar, a symbol of the ego. That
I think it's a good argument to make there.
In that, like, it doesn't matter what makes sense or anything. It's just the fact that people like me. I'm me. Yay.
Sure.
And And I've kind of summed it up this way before, that in the way that Trump is the symbol of the ego, Hillary Clinton is the symbol of the establishment. Which is also why so many millennials also hate Clinton, because the establishment hasn't done anything for them either.
For as goes federal level U.S. politics, the millennials don't get a say yet. Mm-hmm. Like, we just don't. And that's, I mean, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, in the sense that increasingly I think the federal government is going to be ineffective. Mm-hmm. Like, just straight up, I don't care who gets in office in November or going forwards. There's just going to be things that the federal government isn't going to be able to do, because that's not the direction that society and culture and technology and economics is heading. Mm-hmm. Even, if you resurrected any of our greatest presidents, Lincoln, Washington, either of the Roosevelts, whatever, and put them in office in November of this year, or January of next year, actually, and we're like, all right, fix everything, I think people would still end up disappointed, because we're just not the same country that we were. No one's going to. The apathy has grown so deep that I don't think it's possible for the U.S. to pull like a World War II style mobilization for anything going forward. So when you hear things, particularly these global crises like climate change, and people are talking for like a Manhattan-like project for climate change, I'm just kind of like rolling my eyes, and I'm like, all right, what that means to me is we're going to have to deal with climate change, because it's going to happen, because we're not going to mobilize in time. And I don't think anyone is. This is what I mean when I say the nation state is becoming less capable of doing things. I'm not just talking about the military. Like, that's a given. Most people in this country would not willingly get drafted to fight for the United States. Mm-hmm. You could not say that 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking just about the idea of the nation state itself. Like, why does the federal government mean anything to me if it's increasingly proven to be just another arm for big finance that doesn't care anything about me?
And that is why I do pull for just, we're gonna just strip it all, here's the new thing, and this is how it works. And that is something that the Venus Project has focused so much on, is just, here's how it's going to work.
Yeah, and I think there is a big benefit to just creating something and saying here's your alternative, join up now, taking it out of the ideal world and putting it into reality.
But the hardest part is going to be getting people to change their mind, to go, and which is what you were saying earlier, is that there are ideas that are going to kill us. And we have to, because we have no choice.
Right, get out of its way.
We have to get rid of those ideas. And that's the biggest point where we have to go. That's kind of another reason why I have this podcast, to get ideas out and to show that these ideas are bad. These ideas are good. Let's move towards the better ideas.
Right. Well, and I think that you join a rising tide of individuals that are trying to figure this out. And I don't think it's going to be one. I don't think it's going to be one answer fits all. Mm-hmm. I think during the 20th century, and this eerily masked the mass production of the time, there was one answer that just was proven to work better than others. We're not going to choose fascism, they lost. We're not going to choose socialism, they starved themselves and then lost. We're not going to choose neutrality because they got invaded and lost. We're going to choose mostly open market, mostly kind of democratic, nation-state-based governance. And that was the whole history of the 20th century, is groups that chose that did really well, groups that didn't choose that eventually lost. And that's why the government got so big, by the way. The government in 1900 and the government in 2000, that's the greatest change in government in American history, and probably will ever be, because there's not a lot of room for us to get more government-y. There's ways to make the government as it exists work better. Socializing costs would be part of that, but I mean, it's we went from a government of maybe a dozen departments to a government of 100 with 1,000 subdivisions.
Yeah.
To the point where like 20% of our workforce now works for the government.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we were somehow able to hook up an electrode to like Thomas Jefferson's grave, I'm pretty sure the amount of rolling around he'd be doing at the size the federal government has been given would like power us for the rest of ever, just with the amount of rolling in his grave he'd be doing because of that. But there were good reasons for that to happen. I mean, you know, if you were an American in 1941 after Pearl Harbor, there's no way that you weren't like, yeah, let's mobilize everything and let's just do this. That was the whole history of the 20th century. I think the whole history of the 21st century is going to be an unwinding from that, and that you and I join a raucous cacophony of other people that are trying to figure out what that unwinding is going to look like, and because it's going from a place of great centralization to kind of a patchwork ending. There's going to be multiple good ideas that you can pick up and mix and match depending on where you are and who you are and what you want to do, and that's what excites me about, you know, what I'm interested in and why it is so laser focused on what people do, because it's no longer going to be just one answer. That's part of why technocrats nowadays fail so hard when they try and give answers, is because there are people who spent their entire lives where the only question had only one answer. Yeah. And now there's a ton of questions with tons of different answers, and they're only given... You already know what Washington's answer is going to be for a particular thing. And that's increasingly going to be not just a wrong answer, but an irrelevant one.
Yeah, and I do have some, like, general dissonance, because I do have this idea that there are, like... good ideas and better ideas and bad ideas, and while we may not know what the supposed right answer is, there is a more correct answer, right? And I feel that it could be better if we just tried our best to lean towards the best idea, to like figure out what the best idea is and go towards it, rather than split apart, because again, this is just my bias, I guess, but like unity is a very important part of humanity, and whether or not we are united very much in the sense that like we are the United States or we are, you know, this country, I think that more of a unity as just being like, hey, we all live on this planet, and to make sure that we all don't die from the things that we did to the planet, this is what we need to be united around.
Okay. So when you say unity, I mean, does that, or when you say like best ideas, is that a utilitarian thing? Like, oh, this works the best, therefore, or is this a moral presupposition that says like, because we hold this to be good, we should do this? Is this like an ought, or is this an is proposition for what is best?
It's a little bit of both, because and I sense there's going to be a lot of disagreement with a lot of people, but that I find that and as you know, I'm a very Sam Harris type of person, that there is sort of a more correct answer in a scientific way that you can objectively show. The book, The Moral Landscape by Sam Harris, kind of shows how, you know, certain things are objectively better for humans than other things. And so if we can objectively figure out morals, we can objectively figure out what is best for us as humanity and as a planet Earth. And so, yes, in a utilitarian sense, figuring out what the best idea is, but also morally, because they should go hand in hand. Moral questions can be answered in a way that can be correct pretty much most of the time.
So like exceptions always prove the rule.
Yes, there's always exceptions. But it's still like should you lie is one of them, and so.
But everybody does lie.
Yeah, but that's the difference. That should and whether or not it happens is one thing, and so.
Well, do you think honesty is a universal value?
Yes, because we rely on the truth every moment of our lives.
Okay.
And so, if there was, I think I've explained this before. It's the moral imperative or something. Kant is the philosopher.
Okay. Right.
But basically, if you apply the moral rule to everyone, if everybody follows the rule.
His rule was, should we do something? Well, if we apply this to everybody and the answer is yes, then we should do something.
Yeah.
But if we, like
it has to exist on its own.
Exactly. And that, if you wanting to do something could not be successfully applied to everyone without like massively bad things happening,
exactly, then
you should not do it.
And so what happens there is if lying becomes a moral principle, then if everyone lies all the time, there is no semblance of truth whatsoever.
Sure.
Therefore, there's no semblance of what lying is. And so that rule destroys itself in being a rule. And so, therefore, it just logically cannot work. And so, those same sorts of things can be answered through how we shape our society, whether or not we should kill, whether or not we should...
Kant's, and I think it's called the categorical imperative.
Categorical imperative.
That's basically a de-Christianized golden rule.
Mm-hmm.
Do unto others only that which you would be comfortable with everyone doing unto you.
Yeah.
And I think that there can be I think, the human mind has this bias where if you want to give an example to disprove something moral, you automatically go towards the worst thing you can find.
Exactly.
Like if you ask somebody, should you kill, I guarantee you that 90+% of people are going to reference Hitler within the first, maybe 30 seconds of them speaking. It's not going to take very long at all. And so, one of the first counter-arguments towards Kant's categorical imperative is, should you lie to a murderer? Mm-hmm. If you know that somebody's going to murder you, somebody who's already breaking Kant's categorical imperative, because everybody can't murder everyone else, so we would have nobody, should you lie to them? And this was almost immediately against them. Should you, if a murderer wants to murder someone, should you tell the murderer where that person is? And his argument basically fell upon, do the means justify the ends?
Yeah.
It was basically a reversal of Machiavelli. I actually, in the most agape-loving way, completely disagree with you on that. In that I think morals come last. And I think that they have to do so. Because I don't think that there is anything that you can truly say, this is always moral. Which I'm really not comfortable calling myself a moral relativist because of all the baggage associated with that. But that really is the beginnings, the absolute beginnings of moral relativism. And I think that there are some morals that should be tethered down, but that you never can completely complete the task. And this falls back on what I was talking about perfect rather than as good as. You are never going to perfect morals because everything that swirls around it changes. Yeah. And an easy one for you is that it's very easy at this point for you to completely dissect the, claimed morality of Christianity and go, the fuck is everyone thinking? This is it. And Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and all of them go into great detail in this and talking about how it's a disgusting religion full of these value judgments that hold no weight and aren't logical. And my counter argument to that isn't really to say that they're wrong. It's just to say that they're arguing against something that actually isn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a desert tribesman in Judea,
mm-hmm.
I think that these came out of a very context-ridden place that made a lot of sense for when it came up. I think part of the reason that that religion, particularly, deeply faith-based Christian religion in the United States, has become such a divisive and such a spectacle-ridden thing that it is that it is so completely ripped of context, both geographically and ethnically and linguistically and materially. People kind of try and make it work in spite of everything, in spite of itself, in spite of themselves, in spite of everything. And so when you strip it down to just that, it becomes an intensely personal thing that is. They fall back on the faith argument that it's unassailable because that's what they believe. But that goes back to the same relative thing that I'm talking about that from the beginning. I think that morals have to come last because morals are what reinforces the way a society lives without everybody having to go through this laborious logical conversation that we're having for every time something happens.
Yeah.
So when you have a civilization that's changed as fast and as hard as ours has just in the past 50 years, the morals have to change. A big one that proves this for me is abortion. Mm-hmm. Actually, let's not choose one that's quite that divisive. Let's choose divorce.
Okay.
The biggest driver for me, in my opinion, the biggest driver of divorce was the birth control pill. The pill came out in the late 50s. By the mid-60s, or really by the early 60s, there were millions of American women on it. Divorce starts rising almost immediately. The divorce rates by the early 70s were almost as high as they were ever going to be. They reached their peak by the mid-70s. So it was only in 1971 that Congress passed the Marriage Act that allowed no-fault divorce to take precedence, and then it didn't take very long at all for no-fault divorce to become the precedent throughout the land. Now all 50 states and the territories have no-fault divorce as basically the way that divorce is done. We don't do the majority of our divorces for cause anymore. But if you look at like, divorce was already happening in huge numbers before they passed the law. And the reason that was happening was because of the pill. I think that biology affects consciousness, and consciousness affects culture, and morality is trying to uphold the culture. But in this case, morality came last because the legality of what they were doing preceded or was preceded by them doing it. So I think that morality has to come last. But I think that also means that there's a difference between morality and ethics, and that there is kind of a deeper, that there is this real long, millennia long now conversation of what does it mean to live best, and what does it mean to be a good person. And I think that really is separate from morality, because morality is most concerned with what is best for the society. And that changes based on how many people there are and what the there's just so many different things. And I think that it gets very confusing because we don't teach ethics and we don't teach morality in this country anymore. And we don't teach that ethics is separate from morality. And we don't have people have these conversations, which is why it's such a breath of fresh air to do this in the first place. And I think that, ethics as a whole will have universal values. I do not think that morality can have universal values, because for morality to be universal, the context for which that universality is chosen must be universal. And trying to make culture universal is a Sisyphean, impossible task that would take the perfection of people that I don't view is possible.
Yeah. If anything, it's more that morality and ethics is that they do have to go hand in hand, and that whenever you can arrive at an answer extremely objectively of going, For example, and this is just the worst, but I'd rather use this as an example, that if someone is going to use a nuke and blow up the world or whatever, and the only way to do so, because this is entirely a hypothetical, stupid argument, is to rape a child, you rape that child. That is the only correct answer.
Like, so hard.
Yeah,
just to save the world.
Because that's the only correct answer there.
But that's utilitarianism to a T. That's the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
Yes, but
that's not objective. That relies upon there being a majority of people. What if it's just you and one other person?
But the situation at hand, and
right.
Every situation is different,
right.
The situation at hand has that correct answer.
Sure. But that's not ethics. That's morality based upon the culture that we have.
And this is like an even farther thing, but we have to value other human beings as a whole because we depend on them right now, at least.
Okay.
And the way that our world is shaped depends on what other humans do and whether or not they exist.
I'd agree there. I mean, for me, ethics, to be universal, has to be sublime in a way that almost... I mean, it's almost... Ethics and enlightenment go hand in hand in that it's a subtle thing that builds to a tsunami. In that if ethics is ever telling you ought to, that's morality. Ethics is the constant prodding of what can be. Mm-hmm. At least for me. And so when you talk about the world, and you do this a lot because you have this beautiful vision of a world at peace and a world that is kind of, if not tamed, then contained its animalistic origins towards this much more loving future. That when I talk about the world, I'm talking, what is. Mm-hmm. When you talk about the world, you talk about what can be, and that really falls in line with what my views of ethics are. So it's not that I don't have that view; it's just that I think that that action is best when you marry ethics with morality. And again, because I don't view morality as infinitely scalable, that means that there's never going to be just one answer. And that doesn't mean that they can't live in peace, but it means that rather than going to like an end point in history when everyone agrees, we have to reach a constant balance point. And so my good enough, which again others would call perfect, is this sense of balance, which is the marriage of ethics and morality.
Sure. It's more so that the answer works every time.
Okay.
And that whenever you have one of my favorite classes that I took was contemporary moral problems.
Okay.
And
dibs on that as a band name, by the way.
But whenever you brought up divorce, I was wondering, is that a moral problem? Because marriage itself is a social construct, and so that whenever approaching these moral problems, we also have to acknowledge what the thing is, and if it even is a moral problem to begin with.
But I think morality is a social construct. But I think that argument can get very reductionist, and that I think that social constructs don't. The biggest pet peeve I have with the social construct argument is that it makes it appear that these social constructs were like invented one day, like specifically to oppress someone. And no, because as goes, like, I think marriage is a compromise.
Yeah.
Because in aggregate, men want different things than women. And they can agree on things, but they're never going to completely agree on things. And so marriage is basically saying, okay, neither of you guys are going to get everything that you want.
Yeah.
But here's the best that we can do. And yes, that was a very moral system in my definition of the term. Moral being, this is what keeps our society going. This is what provides the least amount of damage for people. And to have that break down as utterly as it did 40 to 50 years ago and remain as broken as it has up to now means that morality is changing. I think that it is very naive of people to imagine that everyone from our generation will get married like our grandparents and that will happen. I mean, if that's just not going to happen. And so when you see these people who try and argue on moral grounds that we need to go back to the 50s, everybody gets to laugh at them because everybody but them can see that that's just foolish. And they're just so ego invested in it that they can't. They don't want to rationalize. They don't want to be rational. They want to rationalize. So I think that the morality is going to have to change. So I used marriage as that example precisely because that's something that we can already talk about change in the past tense. I don't think anybody should get married anymore. I think that there is a moral. I think that morality has changed and will continue to change enough that nobody should get married in the sense that we have it right now.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that I don't like relationships at all. It just means that I agree that things have changed enough that we no longer, there's the compromise, because the compromise is always going to have to happen, which means that there's going to be eventually some new moral compromise point that we're going to reach, and that's going to be our new normal. And we haven't reached that yet because right now, because marriage was a compromise, marriage was the majority, because you always had people throughout all the thousands of years who never married, or who married a bunch of people if you were a king. Like, there were always exceptions to this. Because the middle majority has broken down, this allows the radicals in to scream at each other. So you have radicals for the woman's side that says that marriage is oppression, and you have radicals on the men's side that said marriage was the best thing that ever happened to women, and you're just spoiled because we give everything to you. And they're screaming past each other. Neither one of those sides is going to be the answer because they're screaming past. There's going to have to be a new balance point. Yeah. And I think it's going to be much more fluid relationships. Yeah. At least in the short to medium term.
I think what I'm finding through the course of this conversation is
and I know I just said that to a guy who's been with the same girl for like 6 years. Yes. So I'm not saying that relationships can't work. Like, I would be a hypocrite speaking that to your face. But I'm also the hypocrite for saying, like, what even is a relationship? Blah, blah, blah. Like, right, yeah.
And so I acknowledge that that relationships are a contract. I always refer to it as a contract. I agree to these terms.
I like that, but I don't lead with that up front because it sounds like, all right, like, sign my wife contract and get me one of the women's. Like, it's not that, but you're right. It is a compromise.
I'm very bluntly, just blunt. That
bluntly blunt. Yes.
And so, what I'm coming to find through this conversation is that I see much less of morals in that there almost aren't any in that sense, that it sort of, and I try my best to be an emotionless robot that just decides everything based on information and and what becomes of that is that I make my decisions based on just the facts and what works best and all of these things, and then I get emotionally attached to what you've
already decided.
What those I've instilled my values, my moral values, in that which is objective and empirical, to where I can feel happy just saying, oh yes, my relationship is a contract. Right. And not feeling like, oh, you're just taking away all the emotion out of it. Right. Like, no, that's just what it is.
Right.
And so, to an extent, this is just me, but I feel that there's some value to it that we could all have from it, is that we all kind of might benefit from having a more empirical view and stance from what we call a moral question.
Sure. I don't think I'm actually arguing against you all that much. I think really it's just we're arguing that our steps are different, because I really don't disagree with you that it is a contract. That, you know, I also think that at least our generation puts too much stock in being like the relationship has to like provide them with everything. But that's a tangent. I still think morality has to come last, and here's why. For as just goes relationships, morality is a shortcut. And it's because, you know, eventually on a meta level, the society has the conversation that we are having right now and decides, all right, this is the best we're going to be able to get. This is the best societal contract we're going to be able to carve out for you know, what we have right now. And most people implicitly agree with it, and there's your morality.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. I mean, the fact that everyone right now tries to be, in your words, an emotionless robot is because there is no contract, and the best you can do is what's best for me. In fact, it would be illogical, you would be a little bit foolish to not think about what's best for you, because there is no other guarantee. Which means that morality is not actually concerned with what is best for the individual. It's concerned with what is best for society. It's concerned what is best what is best for the compromise. And this is why there have always been people who we deem as immoral. These are people who literally are immoral, who are doing what is only best for themselves in flagrant violation of this unspoken contract that we all have. And I'm going to call it a contract as well, this moral contract. I really do like that idea, but there's not a whole lot of other people who when they hear contract, don't think about, you know, because contracts can be emotional. You know, you're not just a robot to Sable, but relationships are contractual in the sense that, like, what you expect and what you bring, and what she expects and what you bring. And I think that is actually a very healthy way to look at it, because at that point you can measure where the relationship is going. But that's not simply an emotionless thing. Like, there is a balance point there as well. And on a meta level, that's gone right now. We've destroyed the old one. We have yet to put in a new one, and the only thing you can do is ask, okay, what's best for me? And if you find another person that is best for you, then you try and create this contract between the two of them. But it becomes very fraught, because just the two of you, you know, tossed in these choppy waters without this moral this moral focal point, means that even inadvertently you guys can drift apart very quickly, because there isn't this implicit compromise. On the other hand, if you're just out for yourself, you're doing the best. You're doing the absolute. This is boom times. You know, if a guy or a girl, for that matter, who just wants what they want, does not have the impediments that either side did 50 or even 30 years ago. You do whatever you want. And so, ironically, I think that if you view relationships as a market, meaning if you have a girl who, like, and this is subjective, but if you rate her as an 8, she's got an 8 face and an 8 body and an 8 personality, and like and you have a guy who's an 8. He's got 8 height and 8 personality and 8 worth of money and stuff. Beforehand, they would kind of assortively get with each other, and that was it. It was a highly regulated market, in that was their one, and if you did anything else, it had to be on the black market, because that was not how we worked. Now, relationships are completely unregulated, and just like when you deregulate any other market, you're creating bubbles everywhere, because there is no regulation. That's what happens. And so people who are succeeding in this unregulated relationship market are succeeding all out of proportion to what they would have done otherwise. But for most people, they're not succeeding quite as well as they would have in a regulated market, which is why regulation happens in the first place. Is it is a moral decision to reach a compromise which benefits the greatest number of people the most, or viewed another way, does the least amount of damage.
Yeah.
So in an unregulated market, the game becomes, how do I become one of the small number of winners? Mm-hmm. And you actually would be an outlier in this regard, but you've gone the complete other direction, and you're like, nope, relationship for me, I'm going to make this work, and you've lasted more than half a decade.
Yeah.
There are people that I know who have met, gotten engaged, gotten married, and are now divorced within the span of time that you have just been in a relation. And you are the outlier in this regard, and I love that, because for you, that's personally what is best. Like, you've reached you've reached what you want. Your contract is being upheld. But what I'm saying is that is rare, because that's a personal decision, and it's a decision you make every day between you and Sable to keep that going.
Yeah.
And the meta dynamics for everyone to find someone like that are so rare that I don't think that is sustainable for everyone.
Okay, I'm gonna start wrapping up because we are kind of over an hour.
Yeah, we went hard.
But what I will say, and now that this has turned into like relationship advice,
right? We got like my meta thing out of the way early, and now we're going like really far in the other direction.
Sure, but what, and I will just like go full on relationship advice here, is that what has kept us together is not like some, like, oh, we just love each other so much, and it's like, yes, there is a bit of that. We do love each other so much,
sure.
But it comes from that I was a different person 6 years ago.
I think,
and so was she.
I would be very dissatisfied if I couldn't say that every 6 years.
And so, for me to say that I love this Sable forever is impossible.
Right.
What we are is changing individuals, and that we, Chris Ryan has said this a lot too, is that you are in a changing relationship. You are with a different person throughout the years,
sure.
and you have to learn to love this person throughout the years, and we manage that through communication, which is the number one thing in every relationship,
right,
more so than, because even relationships that are just friendships, even relationships that are a workplace,
sure.
the number one way to make sure that relationships function is through communication.
Sure.
I understand these things about you, you understand these things about me, and as long as we kind of get that all out in the open, we can understand each other and work with each other better.
I don't think it's just that you communicate, though. I think it is what you communicate as well. I know a lot of guys. Well, you say that, but I don't think that is actually obvious. Particularly for a guy, particularly from a guy's point of view, because women are, in general, better. Well, not better, but more inclined for personal, interpersonal communication.
Sure.
And you that there are objective trends for that. I get a little defensive when I say that, because there's always one person out of every 5 that I talk about that just gets all offended when that. But no, like that's. And so for some guys that I know, that they get so frustrated with their relationships because they are objectively trying to communicate, but what the woman expects from them isn't just communication, but it's an understanding of what he should communicate.
Yes.
And he gets, if she would just tell me what she wanted, then I would do it. And what they don't understand is that, him not having that implicit understanding of what she wants and what she wants him to communicate is the problem. And because she's broken the lines of communication, when lines of communication get broken, you don't get a message saying the line of communication is broken. That's what the lines of communication being broken means. And so there is a certain amount of just cognition that you need to have about communication, so that you can have this depth of conversation either between us and especially between relationships or long-term relationships.
Yeah. And so it's not just communication, it's good communication.
Right.
And then finding ways to agree within that. Just understanding one another. People want to be understood.
Oh, yeah.
And so whenever someone tells you something like about themselves or just something that they're thinking, they say it because they want the other to understand.
Sure.
We are humans. We are relationship-based individuals because I've said it before, and a lot of times humans die whenever they don't get connection between one another. Right. Like literally biologically start dying.
Babies die real quick.
Yeah, and like inmates that are in solitary confinement for too long, their brains just start breaking.
Yeah.
So humans want to be understood. And so the more that we try to understand each other, the better we can coexist.
I like that. I really do.
Which is a good note to end on, because this is exactly what we're doing. We are trying to understand each other through the airwaves that we're putting this podcast in. And so thank you for trying to understand me.
Thank you.
And
likewise.
So, yeah. Oryx Blog. That's what
well, that really doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about now. But it's that's what I contribute to. That's what I help co-run. That's I mean, I'm not even going to plug it because it has absolutely nothing to do with what we talked about. That's what in my free time I do right now, and then between that and this, I'm trying to spin up something that deals with, that's not just a job, that deals with my passions, so that I can connect with other people that share my passion, and I can really, instead of just talking about building a community, I can actually go ahead and build this network tribe idea that I have, and then make money doing it.
Yeah.
So
that's how we have to live in this world.
That's the dream.
And so this is Cory. Well, we didn't have introductions, so this is Cory.
Yeah, let's do this all reversed. This is my second time.
And I'm Santiago Ramones. My way of trying to make a living in the future is to make music for people who need it in the background of things. So
it's just in the background.
Well, I mean, video games and film and such. So you can,
in a very real way, it's been said that music is the universal language.
Yeah.
And you're all about communication. The amount that you can communicate through music could potentially dwarf anything you could do.
Yeah. Through
speech or through writing. And I think that's a very beautiful way of trying to accomplish what you want to do.
Cool. So you can find my music on SoundCloud, or just go to my website, santiagoramones.com, and you will be linked to all of the many other things that I do.
But I gotta get a myname.com thing. I really do.
Myname.com probably already exists. So
yeah, CoryHall.com probably also exists.
So yeah, we'll
have to break out the middle name or something,
or find like a thing that you do, because my Twitter handle is Santiago R_music, because Santiago Ramones was taken, or I just couldn't use it or whatever. Either way, thanks for listening. Love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong.